All right, I'm going to give you a very quick rundown of our introduction to Hamlet. I've broken this into three parts to make each video a little bit shorter and a bit more manageable. So, to start, the overview of what we're going to do in these three parts, we're going to begin with an introduction. Then we're going to talk about reading Hamlet and examining Hamlet as the first modern man before looking at the key questions raised by the play and finally looking at the play as a tragedy. Now we know that Hamlet was written sometime between 1599 and 1602. Dates on that will vary. A generally accepted date is 1601. It's probably a reworking of a version that the academics called the Hamlet, meaning the earlier Hamlet, that was performed by Shakespeare's company. May well have been co-written by Shakespeare, may well have been written by one of his contemporaries, Thomas Kyd. And it wasn't particularly well received. It was a little bit too wordy, the Hamlet. But it's also part of an old tradition of revenge plays, and it's based on the oral legend about Hamlet, a prince whose father was killed by his uncle, and who then married his mother. So Hamlet pretends to be mad while plotting to avenge his father's death, and eventually is able to kill his uncle. But there are key differences here. In the original Hamlet, which comes to us from Saxo Grammaticus's history, and actually it's through the French translation of Saxo Grammaticus. In the original, Hamlet ends up reigning as king. He doesn't end up dying. The storyline is a lot different. So Shakespeare's version departs a lot. And other key differences are that Hamlet's father is not called Hamlet. He has a different name. The name Claudius is invented by Hamlet. The Fortinbras, the prince of Norway, who's attacking Denmark, his father is also called Fortinbras in a Shakespeare play, but not in the original. The play centres around Hamlet's decision whether or not to avenge the murder of his father, the king of Denmark. Interestingly, in the play, Claudius is never mentioned by name. He's always called the king. The weight of the decision drives all the action and relationships in the play. Interestingly, in Shakespeare, the first four acts are all about Hamlet thinking and talking about what he needs to do. It's not driven by action the way many other plays are. Now, when we're reading Hamlet, the play, and the character here, the character can be read as a tragic figure whose flaw is an unwillingness to act. We say unwillingness because some might call it procrastination, others might call it that he's weighed down too heavily by what he needs to do. He can be read as a representative of the human psyche, and this is most famously talked about by Freud and Jung, and even Lacan. A modern individual fighting against the old ways of seeing and being in the world. This is another reading, particularly when we look at the play in the context of the English Reformation. Shakespeare took the basic plotline and created 5 stories in one. We have a family drama, a love story, a story about madness, a revenge play, political thriller. And so that concludes our first section here. I'll be continuing on with the next part, so hopefully that introduction was helpful.